Welcome to Pause for the Truth, where you can sit back, relax, and hear an honest dialogue about health, wealth, legal, and social issues. The hosts are Dr. Rogers Kane, family practice physician, and Jocelyn Turner, health education consultant, with co hosts from the Northeast Florida Medical Society and its foundation. Stay tuned for the truth about matters affecting you and your family. We're here to tell you what's really going on and why. Good evening and welcome to a very special edition of Pause for the Truth. I am your co host, Jocelyn Turner. Such a pleasure to be here with you this evening, and even a greater pleasure to have such a great conversation and discussion tonight about something that's near and dear to my heart, as well as to our very special guest joining us this evening. Dr. Kane, my co host, is serving in a dual role tonight. I want to give our audience, especially our audience who's been returning year after year, week after week, I want to give you a hint that Dr. Kane decided to step in the role not only as co-host tonight, but it's also our technology backup. So Tyrone, our technology guru, is on just in case Dr. Kane doesn't press the right button or do the right thing. How are you doing this evening, Dr. Kane?
I'm doing fine. I appreciate the introduction, but I think everybody already know Tyrone is going to have to jump on this from from jump start because the technology is not my area of expertise. So,
Oh
um,
boy.
but with that, I can appreciate the weather. The weather looked good today. I'm most happy that our guests are here. We can introduce each one by the title for right now. We'll just go ahead and do it right quick. And then I'll let them speak. I'll let you finish the introduction, Ms. Turner. We got
Well,
Dr. Cheryl Holder.
hold on, Dr. Kane.
Okay.
I have a special way of doing this. You just sit tight.
Okay, well, go ahead.
You're so this evening, as I mentioned, this is a special edition of Pause for the Truth. On Saturday, March 30th, just in case you didn't know, it is National Doctors Day. Now, that may not be important to you, but for those of us involved with Pause for the Truth, it is an important occasion for us because if it were not for our local chapter, the Northeast Florida Medical Society, we may not have this podcast, right? Because we lean so much on their expertise. So this evening, we are celebrating National Doctors Day a little early, giving you a heads up so you can reach out to your physician and thank them for the great work that they're doing. As Dr. Kane says, we're going to go ahead and start by asking our guests to introduce themselves. Not only do we have representatives from the Northeast Florida Medical Society tonight, we also have the president of the Florida State Medical Association, Dr. Cheryl Holder. Now, doctors and many of our guests, being who they are, they're always multitasking. So, as you can see, Dr. Holder is somewhere in America, and so we are welcoming her this evening. Thank you, Dr. Holder. Tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for inviting me on and early celebration of Doctor's Day. I am right now in Queens, New York, waiting for the bus to take me to LaGuardia Airport. I like public transportation because one of the things I do is climate change, education, and awareness of what happens to our health because the planet has changed and warmed. But I'm a board certified internist, HIV specialist. I've been here for many years in Florida doing work with primary care, running health centers. I was an academician for about 10 years at FIU Herbert Wertheim College of Medicine, where it's founding faculty to integrate social determinants of health into the curriculum and having doctors really come out much more prepared to work with America as we see it, as diverse as it is. And as also diversity dean for a time, which we know has changed in Florida. And that's another thing, as everybody knows, which impacts a lot of what we do. And I retired in the end of December of 2022 to really do more of my climate change work and work with the National Medical Association on as the state president in getting the doctors, the Black physicians together and working more on health disparities and diversity and increasing our numbers. So I think that's a quick summary of what I do, who I am, and I do it all over the country and hopefully internationally.
Thank you. Thank you again and welcome. And also, extra thanks to you for, again, multitasking and taking public transportation and still engaging in discussion tonight. So if I pose a question to you and you don't answer, I'll understand that means it's not necessarily a good time, but we'll wait for you to chime back in. Also joining us is Dr. Kelly Tice. As I mentioned, we have members of the Northeast Florida Medical Society, and joining us, the president of the Northeast Florida Medical Society, Dr. Kelly Tice. How are you doing this evening, Dr. Tice?
I'm doing great, Jocelyn. I'm so excited to have been included in today's conversation with physicians who have served as mentors and guides for me, and really who are responsible for the Northeast Florida Medical Society being what it is. Having done and led the work for so many years in our community. So really proud to be here tonight.
Thank you. And tell our audience a little bit about you, just in case they don't know, other than serving as the president of the Medical Society. Tell us a little bit about you and your work in the community here.
Sure. I'm a Philly physician. Yeah. So I'm a Philly physician who trained right here in Jacksonville. I finished my family medicine training at St. Vincent's Family Medicine Residency Program. Just in 2001 was when I came out of residency training. And I knew as a med student that I was going to go into a primary care area of medicine. And I actually had a National Health Service Corps scholarship. And that meant that I had to give 3 years of service in return for that scholarship money that paid for my med school education. And I did that service commitment right here in the city of Jacksonville. That's how I got my start in public health, and actually worked for the first couple of decades of my career in public health, both as a clinician and then eventually as a clinical leader, and then finally as a health officer running the health department here in Duval County. My current position, though, is I am the Vice President of Medical Affairs and Chief Health Equity Officer at GuideWell, which is the parent company of an organization that you are probably familiar with, Florida Blue. That's our insurance arm. And I've been in that role since January of 22, and I've been with GuideWell Florida Blue for just over 5 years now. So really delighted to have the chance to take what I saw and what I learned in public health practice and apply that knowledge on the payer side of the house. So being able to really kind of take the heartache, the disconnects, the poor information that can really plague community members, and translate that for those of us on the payer side who just don't understand what it's like to try to navigate a fragmented health system. Whether you have insurance or not, it is incredibly challenging. So I'm really thrilled and honored to be able to participate in that work.
Thank you. Thank you. Wow, I'm tired, Dr. Tice, just hearing all that you're doing. So thank you. Thank you for joining us tonight. Also joining us for the second time is Dr. Kenneth Nixon. How are you doing this evening, Dr. Nixon? Tell our audience a little bit about your involvement with the Medical Society and what role as far as your area of expertise.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm again Dr. Kenneth Nixon, and at the current moment, I am the vice president of the Northeast Florida Medical Society. And I guess if Dr. Tice needs a right-hand man, I'm there for her. But I have a different pathway to medicine. When I went to medical school, I asked, I'll put it this way. My father came to me with a Army, Air Force, and Navy application and said, okay, if you want to go to med school, you need to pick one of these or all of them. And I started with the Navy because it was the thinnest packet. And and I filled it out and got accepted into the Navy scholarship program. And I was supposed to give them 4 years. I ended up giving them 22. So, so that's kind of how I got started in medicine. Spent 22 years, and within that 22 years that I was there, I did do a family medicine residency and got board certified. Even I think I kind of clashed with Dr. Kane. He was finishing when I started, but it was a circuitous route to say the least. Say the least. But I did finish family medicine at what's called Shands now, but they've dropped that program from family medicine but after I finished retired from the Navy after 22 years. I say, what I'm going to do because I was only 30 years old at the time. Well, maybe not, but I was still.
He's more than 10 years old.
So what am I going to do? So I went to I went to work for University of Florida, and they wanted to send me to this clinic on the north side called Agape. And believe it or not, there was a doctor who was leaving Agape at the time I was arriving, and I'll be darned if she isn't in this group right here.
You're looking at
Mhm. So I started working there with the University of Florida, and I worked with them about 7 years. I seem to be a 7-year guy because after 7 years, I moved on to a private company, and now I've been with the VA for 8 years. So I've overstayed my time there, but I'm still there right now with the Veterans Administration until I move on into the sunset.
Thank you, Dr. Nixon, and welcome back. Thank you for joining us again.
Sure.
And of course, our I won't say like a frequent flyer, but our frequent guest who's been with us numerous times, and we always enjoy having him, is my favorite surgeon, Dr. Kenneth Jones. How are you doing this evening, Dr. Jones? Tell our
Hi,
audience a
good
little bit
evening.
about
How are you? I'm
just
doing
Peachy.
well. I'm glad and I'm enjoying the fact that I woke up to see another day and still have all my wits about me. So that's a good thing.
And as
And
someone said to me, glad to be on top of the grass rather than the grass on top of me.
on top of you, right? Isn't that good?
Yep.
Well, just briefly, I came to Jacksonville in 1983 after completing medical school and residency in the Northeast. So we started the kidney transplant program here in Jacksonville at what was then Methodist Medical Center, that was subsequently merged with University, which is now Shands. That program has been moved to Gainesville. But other than that, I do general surgery, and I've had an office on the north side of Jacksonville since 1985, no, 87. And that office has been there, and we subsequently merged with Ascension. And now we also have an office in the Riverside area. But my association with Northeast Florida goes back to the day that it was formed. And sitting in someone's living room, we went from the Florida Medical, Dental, and Pharmaceutical Association to the Northeast Florida Medical Society, and subsequently the Northeast Florida Medical Society Foundation. I've held a number of positions in the organization. I'm now presently the treasurer of the foundation. So with that, that's kind of briefly what I've been doing, and I've moved here since '83, and I'm still here.
So
Still in
Dr.
practice.
Kane, thank you, Dr. Jones. Dr. Kane, tell us historically, our audience, just in case they don't know about your role or involvement in the medical society over the years.
Well, before I do that, I would like to make sure, and I've done it before, but in case we have new members, new people listening this evening, Dr. Jones was being very humble in terms of the the kidney transplant program. Actually, Dr. Jones invented the latest procedure that they utilize to transplant kidneys.
Oh, wow.
One person to the next. And as a matter of fact, one of the things I always remember about it when I found out was that I do remember before he came up with his plan on how to do the transplantation, they were the patients would have a big old smiley face, scar about this long in their back, okay, and they would wind up using at least, if we're lucky, at least 2 units of packed red blood cells. So 2 units of blood. Dr. Jones got through with it, and he did his magic on it, which they currently use around the world today. Okay, the scar is about this long, if that long, and we don't use any blood in terms of infusing extra blood for that patient because of blood loss during the procedure. So
it is worth mentioning. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you, Dr. Kane. You're so kind. I never pat myself on the back.
I know you didn't, but I had to.
Well, Dr. Kane, let me pat him on the back before you finish. I had to have surgery. I won't say semi-emergency surgery at the onset of the pandemic, and as usual, I called my favorite surgeon, and he got me in and out of there. And I did not develop COVID because I was one scared chick going in that he was like, "You're gonna be fine." And I definitely was. So thank you, Dr. Jones. I appreciate you and your team for that. Go ahead, Dr. Kane. Tell us a little bit about your role in the medical society.
Well, mine is quick and dirty. I was president of the medical society, I don't know, maybe 20 something plus years. I gave it up, not because somebody else wanted the role, but because we needed new minds, new blood, fresh blood. And, after several attempts at trying to pass it on to somebody else, I finally got Kelly in there. And so she wound up being the current president. I've been president of the Florida State Medical Association in the past, just before Dr. Holder. I'm so glad she came along, because then that kept me from having to stay the president of that institution. I've been working, and Ken Jones mentioned, you guys mentioned the Jacksonville North Side. What I want to make sure people understand, that's kind of equivalent to the black side of town, more or less is what we consider Jacksonville North Side. So Dr. Jones and myself both have offices. We don't just preach, we practice where we preach, literally, and making sure that our community, the African-American community, is well served, getting the best advice that we can. And thanks to people like Dr. Nixon, Dr. Tice, and Dr. Holder, all those things seem to be accomplished pretty well within the scope of what they can do. So my kudos goes off to them. I'm a nobody compared to what these guys are doing in the community.
Thank you, Dr. Kane. And I would like to mention, Dr. Holder, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to say Dr. Kane is incredibly humble because he's done so much for Northeast Florida and keeping it going. Because I give a little bit on folks who don't know what National Medical Association, and as I get older, the history is getting lost along the way, especially with the younger doctors who go to the majority schools. And it's 1895 that NMA was started, National Medical Association for Black physicians, because the American Medical Association did not accept Blacks, African folks. So that's why NMA, and since 1895, we have represented the interests and advanced what best healthcare we could for underserved, underrepresented, and as we see, a racialized health system that often provided less care and less quality care for folks of African descent. So we've had to be out there to advocate and push the system to change.
Yep.
So that's what we've been, and we do it across the state. Northeast Florida is one of 9 local societies in Florida, and I'm the president of the 9 societies. And most Northeast has done a great job under the leadership of Kelly and Dr. Nixon and Dr. Keynes in keeping us in the community, advocating for improved health care, and we say we're the conscience of America, because if it weren't for NMA, there would have been no Medicaid, Medicare.
Exactly.
We're the only organization that pushed for it. And we also knew that without the hospitals saying that they would stop discriminating, they wouldn't get paid for Medicare. And that's what led to a lot of the changes in the system. North Carolina, one of the Black physicians out of one of our local societies in North Carolina made a suit, which went to the Supreme Court, which pushed them to desegregate hospitals. So the NMA has had a pivotal role in improving the health of everybody in America. we push for Black folks getting better health, but if Black folks get better health, everybody else, it brings everybody up. So I often say we've done a lot for African Americans, but the biggest benefit is all Americans. And without our work, all Americans wouldn't have this opportunity as we get older to have Medicare. We wouldn't have the services in Medicaid. We wouldn't have moved on to Obamacare, because these are the things that we push, because we know that access to healthcare is one of the key things for keeping you alive longer. So and Dr. Kane's been instrumental in what happens in Northeast Florida. And now with Dr. Nixon, Dr. Jones, and Dr. Tice, we're very, very appreciative of all the work that's been done for NMA and our entire United States because of these efforts.
Thank you for that historical context, Dr. Holder. Just to continue on that note, let's tell us about the historical barriers faced by Black physicians or Black individuals in pursuing careers in medicine. And any of you can chime in on that.
Unfortunately, that's a whole program all by itself.
Two programs.
I mean, that's a weekend retreat. But I would say in the years that I've been involved in medicine, with the education of residents, with the education of medical students, sitting on the medical school admissions committee, I was on there at Cornell when I was there. At this point, we're not even getting enough people applying. That's one of the issues, because the science and the whole idea of medicine is not really enforced within the Black diaspora. The young men, they try to send them to sports. The young ladies, they just kind of tell them there's medicine and this is something you can do. But one of the things is that in the communities, we need to have young African American males and females see African American doctors like themselves in the practice of medicine. And we have to create opportunities for them. And that's one of the early barriers, having them have a love of science, having them have a love of reading and reading science. I mean, it's a big problem, because when I went to medical school in the 70s, now remember, I go back, there are less African Americans now applying to medical school than when I went to medical school in 1974. So what has happened?
That's a shame.
I mean, we have had, quote, the desegregation of schools, not the integration of schools. We've had where historically Black early education entities focused on science, focused on reading, focused on, you're here to represent your family. Then our kids get spread out into these other entities where they look at our kids as the potential athletes when they come to those schools. So nobody's there driving home the importance of education, the importance of science. Let's go back. We don't even have enough Black teachers to do that. Not enough Black science teachers. So, it's a big problem. And we've got to take it down piece by piece by piece to make it something that maybe in 5 to 10 years, we will see the fruits of it.
Thank you, Dr. Jones. Anyone else want to chime in on that?
Well, I give a little historical perspective, because besides what Dr. I think Jones said, which is absolutely true, when you look at the systems involved, that these students come in through elementary school all the way through, even when they're relatively well prepared to be accepted in medical schools, the schools are not accepting many students who demonstrate the studies that show what scores, what GPAs will do well in school. They add a competitive factor to that data, and then they create metrics, we call the grades and GPAs and the MCAT scores, that becomes then ultra competitive. That's where economics play a role. And so who is selected is not based on what the data says will do well in medical school and graduate. It is based on who has the highest score that could make a school look good. And then we get into so many other factors. But even in the number of medical schools that would be available to take students who may not meet that ridiculous competitive factors of very high MCAT scores and very high GPAs, which is really achieved by economics. The richer you are, the higher the scores you can achieve. And schools that will take excellent students that define excellence based on so many criteria that will say that the scores are what they are, but we know that's not what defines a student. We need more of those schools. Those schools were in existence in the US way back in 1919 till a racist report that's called the Flexner Report forced the closing of most schools that did just that, that took in quite a few African American students and were able to create many doctors. When most of those schools were closed, except for Howard and Meharry remaining, and the other schools did not step up in using appropriate criteria to choose excellent people who will be great doctors, we now have the situation where it's a competition of economics. And if you come from lower wealth communities, it's very difficult to get those kind of scores and the preparation that we now say they need. So they now need to have done mission work and community service, and they have to do research, and they have to do so many things to be what we call competitive to get into medical school, but it doesn't achieve being great doctors because we see what's happened with the health system. So we do need a reset of what we define as quality physicians, what we define of accepted criteria for admissions, and then these courses that we go and find students who are more interested in applying, then we will be able to even say, if you're interested and we prepare you well, there will be an opportunity to be accepted. And so that's, we need the entire, we call it now the pathway. We've gotten away from pipeline. Again, pipeline implies oil, and I'm a climate change person, and we have to move away from oil. So we call it now pathway. So the pathway has got to be straightforward for students who may not achieve that false narrative of higher scores and super GPAs and super research to be excellent doctors. So if we can do all of that, I think we can increase our numbers. But we can't just do our side and the other systems don't do their side, or else we'll be hitting that glass ceiling again. And it's pretty, very oppressive right now. When I left medical admissions, it was very difficult to get students who didn't meet those false criteria for admissions.
Thank you, Dr. Holder. Dr. Tice?
Yeah, I'd like to add that, and folks may not realize, right? Once you get into medical school using these criteria, and then graduate, you then have to do your specialty training, a residency. And that's another place where we have to intervene. Data collected and shared with the membership of the National Medical Association at the last annual convention shows that minority residents, so physicians in training, are more likely to have complaints lodged against them, more likely to be sort of brought up for disciplinary action, or more likely to have difficulty in terms of being fairly evaluated by their mentors and faculty advisors, and are more likely to either receive an action or be asked to leave or leave a program. And the process for supporting yourself, defending yourself against that is labor intensive, it's complicated. There are some deadlines that are, that a resident would have to adhere to in order to even defend his or herself against something like that. It's set up against the person who is having the difficulty, and we have a responsibility as a minority physician organization we have to lean in and support our students in training. Now, we do an extraordinary job already in mentorship. We do support residents, but there is a need for support against complaints that very often are baseless or that are a result of bias or racism within the program. The other thing that we have to pay attention to is the experience that young physicians, young and old physicians, have as they get out into practice, right? We talk about the impact of racism on community, on health outcomes. Imagine you're a physician in a work setting and you're experiencing discrimination and bias, where your credentials, where your acumen, where your decisions are being questioned repeatedly. It can become a very toxic and difficult environment. And so that's another place where organizations like ours lean in to try to support physicians, because it can be very difficult. And if you've ever experienced racism, there very often is a physiologic response to that, right? You know you've been wronged. You know it was based on, the social construct of race. Well, that physiologic response can impact your judgment and decision making, right? And so in order to ensure the safety of our physicians themselves and the patients they care for, we've got to intervene to try to create safe environments for physicians and clinicians, even out in practice.
And you know what people, I'm
Just,
sorry.
just adding to that, the fact that what about the physiologic effect on those physicians? The hypertension, the diabetes, the sleepless nights. And for everyone listening, I'm going to tell you there's a lot of racism in residency programs. Okay? I'm going to call it the way it is. I've been around 40 some years looking and seeing what happens. Many programs have a pyramid system. And if anyone thinks with a pyramid, think of a triangle. The base of the triangle is wide. And the further along you go, they drop residents. And many times, the residents that are being dropped are the African American residents. Even if you have better grades, even if you have, there's always something, they come up, well, he or she doesn't really relate, or doesn't relate to the program. There is a lot of racism still going on. And organizations like the Northeast Medical Society have to intervene on behalf of those residents. That means we need to find out where the residents are, who they are, and let them know we are here for them. We've had to do this in Jacksonville. I could think of at least 4 times I've had to intervene on behalf of residents. A couple of those times I got them better residency slots somewhere else. But it happens. It happens a lot. I just spoke to one of the people that was being pushed out right here, who went to a better place, who's now chief of pediatric cardiac surgery at University of Chicago Northwestern. You mean to tell me that he was not good? Yes, he was good. He was excellent. He had higher scores than everybody in there. But they couldn't feel comfortable. Don't let me go that way. I'm just telling you, that's the environment that we're presently in, and it's not getting any better.
Yeah, Black doctors are only 5% of the whole medical schools when they graduate, yet they're 20% of the doctors who are dismissed.
Yes.
So you're taking a smaller number already, and then they somehow don't do well. There's a study that they did it with Black kids in the kindergarten elementary school system. And they tracked the teachers' eye contact and the teachers' reporting, and they saw that the teachers paid much more attention to the behavior of the Black male. When they did a real objective data collection, the kids were not misbehaving any more than any other kids, but because the teacher was so hyper-focused on the behavior of that child, the teacher found that child to be a problem. And that's what we see in medical residency. When you leave the testing to go into the subjective evaluation of folks who are basically biased, they will look for every mistake a resident could make, and nobody is perfect. And then they judge those mistakes harshly. Yet if you're objective, everybody was doing the same thing pretty much. So this is what leads to so much of the discrimination and the dismissal. And then the basic preference of your fit, as they call it, is whether you fit or not. And that often we know means the socioeconomic status, cultural status, and the melanin production status is what leads to who stays on top. So these are many of the things that Black physicians face. But when we get out, it's amazing how many of us are not damaged in the sense that we don't give good care. because all the data shows that if you want excellent care, Black physicians, especially Black women, are ranking very, very high in the quality. And they did a study with pediatrics, and those kids who were assigned to Black physicians did really, really well. So we are incredibly, as we say, resilient, but it does take a toll because Black physicians do die younger than the majority of physicians. And I think it's partly just the weathering we go through in the whole practice.
Yeah, and Dr. Holder, representation matters. I was going to ask, for you all to discuss, because I already know, but tell our audience, for the people in the back who don't know, how Black physicians serve as role models and advocates for underrepresented communities.
Dr. Nixon or Dr. Tice, either one of you can grab that.
Well, we have to put ourselves out there. We have to let people know that we exist, and once that connection is made, let's say in a church setting or just in almost any community setting, we really need to feel comfortable with talking with the young people and trying to see who we can spark that make a spark and get that person interested in medicine. So every time I'm just so proud that in my church, we've sparked three physicians in the last, I don't know, let's say 10 years, and it's all just being exposed to them, and we've kind of led them the way. They ask questions, and we're able to get them into the right places and guide their
path.
Their path. Yeah, I was going to say pipeline, but I can't say that anymore. Thank you very much. But so that's a change I'm making.
That's awesome. That's awesome, Dr. Nixon. I mean, to say that, 3 may not sound like a lot, but that's a lot just coming. And so just imagine with every Black church in Jacksonville, if they could do one physician, just how amazing that would be, right? So each week we feature a history maker, and our usual technology expert has created a history maker moment for us. So Dr. Holder, this will give you a chance to take a little breather, and the rest of you don't go anywhere. Just to our audience, enjoy our history maker moment for the week, and then we'll return with our discussion.
In the grand tapestry of time, every stitch tells a story. Welcome to Pause for the Truth, your window into the past and present. Today, on this 26th day of March, a day just like any other, yet unique in its own right, we embark on a journey through the annals of history. We delve into the lives of those who dared to dream, who defied odds, who became the history makers. A minute might seem fleeting, but within it, stories of eons can unfurl. As we traverse through these moments, we honor those who have shaped our world, those whose stories are etched into the fabric of our existence. We invite you to join us, to pause, to reflect, and to celebrate the truth of our shared history. Every day is a page in our story, every moment a chance to make history. This is Pause for the Truth, where every minute counts. Stay tuned, for the past is always present here. Onesimus, an enslaved African, describes to Cotton Mather the African method of inoculation against smallpox. The technique, later used to protect American Revolutionary War soldiers, is perfected in the 1790s by British Dr. Edward Jenner's use of a less virulent organism. Dr. James Durham, born into slavery in 1762, buys his freedom and begins his own medical practice in New Orleans, becoming the first African-American doctor in the United States. As a youngster, he was owned by a number of doctors who taught him how to read and write, mix medicines, and serve and work with patients. Durham had a flourishing medical practice in New Orleans until 1801, when the city restricted his practice because he did not have a formal medical degree. Dr. James Durham is invited to Philadelphia to meet Dr. Benjamin Rush, who wanted to investigate Durham's reported success in treating patients with diphtheria. Dr. Rush, a signer of the Declaration of Independence and one of America's foremost physicians, was so impressed that he personally read Durham's paper on diphtheria before the College of Physicians of Philadelphia. Durham returned to New Orleans in 1789, where he saved more yellow fever victims than any other physician. During an epidemic that killed thousands, he lost 11 of 64 patients. Dr. James McCoon Smith graduates from the University of Glasgow, becoming the first African American to earn a medical degree. Dr. David Jones Peck becomes the first African American medical student to graduate from a medical school in the United States, Rush Medical College, Chicago, Illinois. Augusta, Georgia. The Jackson Street Hospital is established as the first institution of record solely for the care of colored patients. The founders were a group of charitable-minded whites, led by Dr. Henry Fraser Campbell, University of Georgia School of Medicine. There was no colored staff in this three-story structure, which housed 50 beds, operating quarters, and a lecture hall. Freedman's Hospital is established in Washington, D.C., and is the only federally funded healthcare facility for blacks in the nation. Born a slave in Georgia in 1848, Susie Baker, who later became known as Susie King Taylor, is the first African-American U.S. Army nurse during the Civil War. King served in a newly formed regiment of black soldiers organized at Port Royal Island off the South Carolina coast by Major General David Hunter, commander of the Union's Department of the South. After the war, she helped to organize a branch of the Women's Relief Corps. Dr. Rebecca Lee Crumpler, the first African-American female to earn a medical degree, graduates from New England Female Medical College, Boston. Robert Tanner Freeman is one of the first 6 graduates in dental medicine from Harvard University, thus becoming the first African-American to receive an education in dentistry and a dental degree from an American medical school. Freeman was born in 1847 to slave parents in North Carolina. Washington, D.C., Howard University School of Medicine, established for the purpose of educating African-American doctors, opens to both black and white students, including women. Dr. James Francis Schober earns his MD from Howard University School of Medicine, Washington.
Wow. You know, when Dr. Kane talked earlier, thank you, Tyrone, for that. When Dr. Kane talked earlier about the medical advancement that Dr. Jones made, I was reminded of Dr. Tony Hansberry II at age 14. He invented a technique called the Hansberry stitch while a student at Darnell Cookman Middle High School of Medical Arts right here in Jacksonville, Florida, at age 14. So as Dr. Nixon, Dr. Jones, Dr. Tice, Dr. Holder, Dr. Kane talk about the importance, especially Dr. Jones talked about the importance, and Dr. Nixon, of working with students. And at a young age, you never know the seeds that you plant and what advances they can make, because the Hansberry stitch improved how the top of the vagina is sutured after a hysterectomy, which can reduce surgery time, pain, and complications for 600,000 women annually. I mean, just 14 doctors. That was just so amazing to me at the time. And really knowing that Black physicians are so key and vital to our community. Dr. Kane, I've been hogging the conversation. Do you have a question for our guest this evening?
I may not have a question as much as I just want to make a add to a piggyback on something someone said, Dr. Jones in particular, in terms of the things, the difficulties that Black physicians in terms of seeking education have to pursue and to put up with. Residency, medical school is bad enough, particularly if you're in a non-Black medical school. Even when it's a Black medical school, it's tough. It's not tough as far as racism, as much as racism is concerned, unless you was in a program like mine that had a little bit of a mix in terms of where you could go. You know, I studied over at Morehouse, but I did a externship over at Emory, and it was well known that it was applied against us to make sure that none of the students at Morehouse graduated or received decent grades from their in terms of them being medical students. I've seen it time and time and time again. I wasn't good enough to go to University of Florida Medical School, but I endured. And when I got here in Jacksonville with the University of Florida Jacksonville campus, I became the chief resident. As chief resident, I run into all kind of issues that were being perpetrated against our Black residents. And you had to sit down and go to bat for them. There were times that I had to meet them on the corner in their homes and stuff, just to try to help them get through the difficulties that they were going through in terms of the stress levels, in terms of planning strategy of how to keep from being dismissed, much like what Dr. Jones did, and I'm sure probably everyone else on this podcast. But it was such a task and such a pain in the ass, be quite frank with you, to have to defend someone because they were smart or smarter than their Caucasian counterparts. But you got to defend them against every decision that they made simply because of racism. The racism in different specialties like dermatology. There's a lawsuit ongoing right now that one of the dermatologists considered as a criteria for allowing people into dermatology residency. And dermatology has been a pure racist aspect of medicine up until recently, maybe in the last, 10, 12 years, Ken? Something like that?
You're muted, Dr. Jones. Dr. Jones, you're muted.
The American Society of Dermatology just met, and they voted overwhelmingly to continue their DEI program and to expand the program, because there was a group of dermatologists who were advocating eliminating the DEI program that the American Society of Dermatology put in place to increase the number of African-American dermatologists, because we have all these Black people here with skin problems and the other people couldn't treat them. So my daughter, I know Rogers know, but she's the co-chair of the Department of Dermatology at Mount Sinai in New York. And granted, they have a very small program, but this was a big deal it was all on the news. I don't know if people caught it on the news, but they really made a big deal about eliminating the DEI program. It was a dermatologist from Syracuse, New York, who kind of promoted it. Luckily, in San Diego last week, the American Society of Dermatology's board voted to continue DEI and also to expand the DEI program, which is kind of like stuffing it in the face of the people who wanted to get rid of it.
Yeah, thank you. And let's talk about health disparities. I do want to get on that a bit. Explain how Black physicians play a crucial role in addressing healthcare disparities. I knew it, Dr. Tice. That's right up your alley, right?
Let me start. First of all, there are a couple things to know sort of right out of the gate. One, those that are that identify as minorities or that might be classified as members of a population that has been historically underserved or is underserved present day are more likely to be cared for by physicians of color. Those physicians are more likely to be in smaller or solo practices. Think Dr. Rogers Kane, who has had his shingle out for years, caring for a significant segment of the population from a primary care perspective on the north side of Jacksonville. The reason that is of critical importance is that the relationship between physician and patient is one built upon trust, right? And if you know that about our community in particular, my grandmother would go to the doctor, but she didn't do anything until she had talked to me, because I'm the doctor she knows, right? My parents, he said, take this, this, and that, but I want to talk to you about it first, right? It's the relationships that exist that our community has built trust in. When we have something like the COVID pandemic, and I shame on us if we don't apply the lessons that the pandemic taught us. The very first thing that was evident was that the majority organizations that had the information right? They knew about the vaccine. They had access to the vaccine. They had knowledge about the funding, about how the vaccine was going to be delivered to our communities. All of that came through majority channels in most communities and across the country. I'll even go so far as to say, and I can tell you that small practice physicians, solo practice physicians were overlooked as those initial decisions were being made, right? And I just told you, those are the physicians that had the trust of the minority community, right? So what we saw happen, I watched it happen. The majority medical associations were invited to the table to have all these discussions, and the minority community, and in fact, the community that was at greatest risk, functioned as an afterthought. Were it not for the Rogers Kanes and the Kenneth Joneses and the legislators of the world who understood and represented and stood for the community of color, specifically the Black community, who raised their hands and said, hey, no, that won't work. This is how that needs to go. And so the connection in terms of relationship in most instances is held by the community of minority physicians. But it is those relationships with minority physicians that is the first thing is the first fat that's trimmed from any budget. I can tell you there are large payer, institutions that cultivate relationships with the majority medical associations and don't even think to cultivate relationships with the minority organizations. And so when large organizations needed to earn the trust and leverage the thought leaders, trusted thought leaders in communities, they didn't have the relationships to leverage. That's when they started calling us, right? Think about the number of phone calls we all got per week, per day during the pandemic. Can you give a talk? Can you come here? Can you sit? We want to interview you. Can you blah, blah, blah? Because they realized that they had actually neglected those relationships and as a result could not reach really important segments of their population. The other thing that is important in terms of cultural alignment is that the outcomes are better. Not only are we great docs, but that relationship, that cultural alignment actually improves outcomes. There was a study a few years ago that showed that a baby is more likely to reach its first birthday, Black babies, if cared for by a Black family physician or pediatrician. Real talk, right? And we can't behave as if that value is not present, but it's up to us to continue to shine a light on that, because the majority institutions and organizations they're very late in cultivating relationships with us. When you talked about it at the start, your favorite surgeon, right? Mm-hmm. We as a community, we know, hey, do you know an ENT that I should go to? Do you know anybody who does such? What about a neurologist? Is there a cardiologist in town? The place where we've got to catch up is behavioral health, right? Where we've got younger Black providers that are deciding that now they're not even going to take insurance. They're not even going to worry with that, right? And it creates this gap in our communities. Patients have better outcomes because with cultural alignment in particular, and with a physician that has lived experience that helps them to have insight into the fact that everybody isn't the same, improves their outcomes. And so it's up to us to now demonstrate for the community at large the value that exists in practices like the ones that have long been open and held by members of organizations like this one.
Let me say this real quick.
Dr. Holder? Dr. Holder, Dr.
Holder.
Something.
Dr. Holder.
Yeah, no, this is so important. All the studies show what we talk about, that the cultural concordance and race and everything else matters because it's communication. And that's the key of what we do in medicine is the history. Most of your diagnosis comes from the history. So who can take a better history? Somebody who the patient will feel comfortable to share the truth on what's happening, and also better able to listen. And I often think of dermatology where they're trained to teach. When you describe a rash in dermatology and they teach it, it's always pearly pink on something. And I'm like, most of the skin I look at is not white, so I will never see a pink round rash. And this is how pretty much that's all they're trained. And so until Black folks started saying, we have to look at how rashes and everything in the skin presents on different colored folks, we didn't get a change. So of course there were misdiagnosing and maltreatment of many Black folks by the majority derm because they were trained with insufficient information. But most Black pediatricians could probably do a better job than most dermatologists out there when it came to skin rash on Black kids. And there's so much more that we know having the diversity in medicine that improves healthcare for all of us, not just the Black folks, but definitely for everyone involved. So we have to really fight because Florida just took away all the DEI programs in the medical school. And several senators and Congress people have put forth a bill that is going to force the dismantling of most diversity programs in medical schools in the country. And they're trying to put that through Congress. And we know that's going to hurt the health of Black folks and people of color and pretty much all Americans, because pushing for better health systems and better research helps us to look at the data and really evaluate the data correctly. And that improves everybody's health. But we have a lot of work to fight against this anti-Blackness and this anti-diversity in a community, in a country that is, there's no way, you can't turn the clocks back. The demographic data is clear that we are heading to a minority-majority country. And everybody's gonna have different skin colors, different cultures. And to be good doctors, you need to provide doctors that represent everyone. So I hope, we can see what happens in our world. But I have to come off because I'm trying to find my gate. But there's one thing I have to say, that demographics for Black physicians is going to be really tough. The US population, 18 to 24, is less than 12%. Of that, you're looking at maybe 4 or 5% of that age group, which is where we'd expect to try and get doctors from, are not Black. So the decline in the Black population overall, in terms of percentage-wise, and the lower number of younger people in our society means that we have to look at other ways of increasing the numbers and think we're going to use the traditional pathway. We're going to need folks who are nurses, who are PAs, who are whatever profession, see if they want to become doctors, take the engineers and see if they're interested in changing. But because we just don't have, based on the last census, the numbers of Black kids 18 to 24 who we could even recruit from. So we are looking at a real problem that I'm sure we can solve because we are Black doctors and we pretty much have got to learn to solve everything.
Well, before you log off, Dr. Holder, I want to say thank you, safe travels, and we definitely will have you on again to finish the discussion.
Same here.
Thank you, Kelly, and everyone for doing a great job in Northeast Florida. Bye.
Thank you, Dr. Holder. I want to say this real quick, Ms. Turner, because they were on the line. Since you mentioned the whole thing about COVID, I remember early on in COVID when most Black folks in Florida, and maybe throughout the rest of the nation, didn't know a thing. I was approached by then Representative Audra Gibson, and she hit me to what was going on in Tallahassee. And that's when the fight started. Only after I got, I guess I'll call it advance notice, did I start to recruit the rest of the state. We're not just talking about Jacksonville. We recruited the rest of the state, okay, South Florida and everywhere else, to get on board with us to demand and to fight for a proper COVID care in our community, regardless of what you thought about the vaccine, okay? And it all started out with testing. And the problem was we were not being tested, okay? All the tests were going to mostly white communities. All the vaccines, when it became available and the treatment became available, it went to white communities. But thanks to some legislators and other physicians that basically put my shoes on, especially when it came down to when it first started, Miss Audra Gibson, Senator Audra Gibson, really put my shoes on, and we took the ball and spreaded it not just in Northeast Florida, and the rest of the nation. So kudos to her. She was on the podcast and gave us a little comment a while back, but I didn't want to let it slide so that people were not aware of what she accomplished just by putting us on the right track.
Absolutely. Absolutely. 100%. But think about it. The first partnership that was announced was with Publix.
And where there was no Publix in our community.
And remember, they gave somebody the most money for their re-election campaign.
Yeah.
So that's a great call out, Dr. Kane. And Audrey Gibson has always represented for us in that manner, right? You know, she calls, she puts a bug in your ear, you pay attention, because it's a definition of collaboration, right? And understanding who needs the information and being able to trust you as a leader to deploy it. We all got those phone calls, right?
Yep.
Hey, we need to do this. Let's get. And I'm proud of how we came together as a professional community. But you're right, none of it would have occurred had we not had insight into how the plans were going down.
Yep, including the equipment that we needed at the time that I had to distribute to the organization, and we gave it to some people in the state. We went as, I guess I can say it now, because the laws of, if there's any law against, any laws against what I did, I don't have to worry about it because the time is expired on it anyway. But but because of that, we were able to get the proper equipment for doctors to go in and see patients, to operate on patients. We're talking hospital equipment that should have been given to hospitals. We meaning Northeast Florida Medical Society, Florida State Medical Association, and thanks to Senator Gibson, we had to go out and disseminate that equipment after she literally beat up on the governor to make sure that we got our share of protective equipment. Otherwise, that this disease could have been much, much, much worse. So kudos to her.
Thank you. I want to ask Dr. Nixon a question real quick. Dr. Nixon, when it comes to representation as far as Black physicians go, are there many Black physicians in within the Veterans Administration or providing services to veterans?
And the answer is no. But however, I do notice that, oh my gosh, my particular group of patients has been getting darker and darker, and everyone is kind of trading in, and I understand why that is, actually, because of the very same thing. It's just a sort of like it's just like society, and the veterans are their own little unique group because they've served, they've been in some dangerous situations, they have medical, and they have traumatic events, and a lot of them have post-traumatic stress, both mental stress, and then they all hurt somewhere. They have knee pain and back pain and every pain you can imagine. However, the management of their concerns has been very racialized. So I just noticed how a significant number of them come to me, and their blood pressure isn't control, their diabetes is out of control. And the interesting thing about the VA is pretty much socialized medicine. I shouldn't have said that, but it is.
Too late.
I didn't mean to say that, but it is. It's a pretty good example of it, because everything is provided, and you just have to sign up, come to a doctor, and I can say, well, you need a specialist, and I can send them to one, and it's so they get excellent health care. If they, it's a little different, because a good percentage of them also can go to Dr. Kane, for instance, and come to me, and in that case I can give them another set of eyes.
We collaborate.
Exactly.
Collaborate on that patient's treatment.
Exactly. And so, but there definitely is a disparity, and there's probably, most of the doctors that I work with, a lot of them are. I mean, there's a good number of Asians and a good number of, because that's like medicine in America. we've talked about some of the percentages of Black physicians, but I guess if you were to take overall percentages, a big percentage will come from countries other than the United States, mainly because there's not enough doctors in America to fill these medical schools, or we just don't produce enough, and so we get a big chunk from, say, India, for instance, you know. And it's okay. They come and they try to learn, and we try to train them and make them culturally competent, and that can take a while to reach cultural competence, and because these veterans also know how to complain, and when they complain, they speak loudly, and a lot of times I've noticed that the louder they complain, the more they get. So it's an interesting system, but but there's definitely disparities there, and until they get to my office, then I try to get them straight. It might take a while, but we've
Yeah,
all been.
you're more or less the equalizer. I can say what you can't say, and that is the system, the way that it's set up, does not favor minorities, even in the VA system. I can say it. Dr. Nixon worked for him. I don't. So I can say whatever I want to along that line. The system is not set up that correct.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you all speak to, because we are beyond the 7:30 hour, can you all speak to our audience before we end about some of the things the Northeast Florida Medical Society has been doing? I know you have an annual fundraiser, and you've spoken about mentorship. Can you talk about why people need to know about the Northeast Florida Medical Society and your members? And Dr. Tice, to your point a few minutes ago, my primary care physician is Black. My OBGYN is Black. My dentists are Black. My surgeon is Black. My gastroenterologist is. So I have made a point of, okay, so maybe it's because of my connection to the Northeast Florida Medical Society, but I wish people would do what you said. But I also would like to appeal to you all as you're answering the question about what you all are doing. Also talk to our audience about what can they do to support you as Black physicians.
Well, first of all, I certainly don't want to walk away from this conversation giving anyone the impression that you can't get good care.
Absolutely.
As Black. However, there is something to be said for the rapport and relationship with the person with whom you're entrusting your healthcare. I also think that building that relationship can be easier when there's cultural sort of concordance. That said, we have formalized and we're very intentional about our investment into our medical community. So our goal is to empower and support professionals in our community so they can provide excellent care. And that's not excellent care to Black patients. That is excellent care to the patients that they serve in North Florida and South Georgia. We do that by supporting physicians who are in practice through networking and support, but we also do that through mentorship. And so we engage with residents, students that are in training in our communities, and in medical students. There isn't a physician in our organization that you could call and ask for a rotation or clerkship or shadowing opportunity where you're going to get a no. All of our members are active in supporting students that are coming up. The big thing that we're doing, and we've given in the last 14 years, we have given more than $200,000 in scholarships to Black students from this area who have chosen a STEM major and are interested in pursuing a health career. And so our gala, annual gala, will be held on May 11th, 6:30 to 10 p.m. We are looking for businesses to sponsor the event. We're also looking for folks to come and attend, participate with us as we sort of show the community how what the pathway to health careers looks like in our community. So May 11th, we will share. Hope that you share with your listeners and your viewership the Eventbrite link for that event, and we'd love for you to buy a ticket, donate, and celebrate with us as we fund our scholarships for 2024.
Thank you for mentioning that, Dr. Tice. Anyone else want to take that? Dr. Kane, did you have a comment, or Dr. Jones about Dr. Jones is with that cute little person that was on the screen with him a few minutes ago.
He gets me upset about now.
He's having fun with who was that, Dr. Jones?
That's my grandson from New York that's visiting.
Oh, cool. Cool.
Yeah, his parents and older siblings are in Europe, and we have him for 10 days.
Nice, nice.
So,
that's the good part.
and that's when I realized
you give them back to the parents.
Young people should have babies.
Dr. Jones, tell me, in your opinion, what can the community do to support the Northeast Florida Medical Society and its members?
I think one of the things that we're doing presently is our Northeast Florida Medical Society. Well, it was Northeast Florida Medical Society.org, but that's been changed. Dr. Tice, you have the new one. We will list the names and the specialties of all the physicians there, understanding fully well that these physicians really care about what's going on in the community. One of the things that I've been seeing, however, it's difficult for physicians today to come into practice privately like Dr. Kane and I did back in the 80s, because most physicians are working for larger healthcare systems. And what I have seen is many of these healthcare systems are withdrawing support within communities that are majority Black. Some of them who've been there for years are closing their offices. They're closing hospitals in predominantly Black communities. And this is across the nation now. And I mean, if anyone would think of Hahnemann Hospital in Philadelphia closing, think of that. And if you want to read the terrible way that was done, there's a full article on that. So what we're seeing is big hospital systems, even here in Jacksonville, how they're not investing anything more in the communities where they consider have more Black people, and putting their resources in communities where they think there will be more white people. And that's a fact. I mean, so that is what's happening. That's reality. And the physicians in the Northeast Florida Medical Society continue to deliver high quality care throughout Jacksonville for everyone, specifically people that live on the North Side. You've got to remember, the North Side is not poor. Have you seen the homes, the teachers, the policemen, the firemen, the longshoremen, all those people with excellent insurance who live on the North Side? There are a couple of hospital systems that are really expanding on the North Side, while there are some hospital systems that are withdrawing from the North Side. And that's part of their strategic plan, not to deliver healthcare to Black people.
Wow. This has been a very interesting conversation. I tell you, I am still hopeful. And Dr. Tice, thank you for mentioning that there are other physicians, because I only mentioned a few of mine. I'm all broke down, so I have plenty of other physicians who are helping to keep all of this fabulousness intact. But I am appreciative of all doctors. And I do want to say at this time, again, happy Doctors Day. I hope that each of you will celebrate on this weekend. If anybody has earned a day of appreciation, it is our doctors. Without their efforts and courage in the face of adversity, our country would be much worse for the wear, much worse. Without an adequate supply of doctors, the healthcare systems are left with significant strain, leading to longer patient wait times, increased workloads for existing medical staff, and an overall reduced quality of care. So again, I hope that you all, each of you, will know that you're appreciated, although sometimes, you're feeling, hey, I got in the business of wanting to take care of folks, but you're having to fight systems. Keep the fight. And I hope that some of the younger members and I don't, Dr. Kane and Tyrone always tells me about picking on younger people, but I say that in a very respectful manner, that I hope that some of our younger physicians don't be discouraged and will, keep the fight going, right? And recognizing that their input matters, and that they will step into the leadership role that the Northeast Florida Medical Society offers them, because leadership in this organization will help on their jobs by saying, I am the president, vice president, or whatever of the Northeast Florida Medical Society, and the position that you hold there will make a difference. And it does, because of the hard work that Dr. Jones and Dr. Kane and Dr. McIntosh and some of the others have done in this community. This is a group that is well respected. I can tell you that over the years. I have mentioned, when I say I know Dr. Kane, boy, I mean, I have gotten invited to some meetings just by saying I know Dr. Kane, right? Dr. Rogers Kane. So Dr. Kane has worked hard, and as well as Dr. Jones, again, and Dr. McIntosh. I mean, my goodness, who doesn't know Dr. CB McIntosh, right? And all the great work that he's done, and the history that he's done. And I even talked to someone who was the first physician from the University of Florida, Dr. Brigady. I talked to him a couple of days ago, just thinking about the historians that have really made such a significant impact on the medical community here in Northeast Florida. So I decided to start off by giving my final thoughts for the evening, because this was about you and for you, because we do recognize and hope that you know that we're here for you, and we're not just here for you to take care of us when we're all broke down and not feeling well, but we're also wanting to support you and advocate for you, and hope our audience does, to help you face or deal with some of the challenges that you're dealing with. But I'm not going to be selfish. I'm going to ask, do any of you have any final thoughts for this evening as we close out the discussion on doctors, celebrating doctors, and the significance that you make, and celebrating Black excellence? Anyone?
Ladies first, Dr. Tice.
I'll just express my gratitude. Thank you for thinking enough of us to even make today a conversation. And, I hope that what I'm able to contribute is an adequate representation of what has been imparted into me by those of you who came before me. I appreciate it.
Dr. Nixon.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that one thing we do, I didn't notice and observe anecdotally, was that Black physicians were dying off fairly young. And so I just want to make sure that we all take care of ourselves too. We know what to do to take care of ourselves. We just have to implement those things. So even amongst our own, we should take care of ourselves so that we can take care of others.
Great point, Dr. Nixon. Thank you.
Dr. Jones.
I mean, in addition to everything that has been said, I just think that as a group, we have to remain vigilant. We have to continue to advocate for our patients and advocate for the communities that we serve. Because as I've noticed it, sitting here after 40 years, is that people who served our community historically are withdrawing their support for our community. And I think it's imperative that as African-American physicians and leaders within our community, we continue to advocate for our patients, advocate for our communities, and of course, advocate for the other physicians who are coming along now, who some of them don't even know the Northeast Florida Medical Society exists. So we need to expand, let the younger people in training know we exist, or the younger people who are moving to Jacksonville. They're all working for big hospital systems, but they need to know there are people available, because it will happen where one of these people will turn on them, and they need the support of the community.
Thank you, Dr. Jones. And Dr. Kane, your final thoughts.
Okay, I'm gonna be quick. Right. I concur with all my colleagues here, but a couple of things I want to make sure we do. Tyrone, if you can go on ahead and post information, if we have available, post information. Dr. Tice can help you with it. Post information in our chat and also online about the gala and how to obtain tickets and blah 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 blah. That okay. The other thing, because Senator Gibson is actually asking for it, and she has been a reliable contributor in the past. The other thing is, Dr. Jones mentioned something about hospital closing. I want our community to be aware that there is some institutions, maybe singular, that are not looking to continue their service on Jacksonville's north side, and we need to stay cognizant of it, and we need to advocate to our patients where they can get care should anything like that happen, or when it happens. I think more or less. I also want to make sure our young physicians, the ones who may or may not be listening to this podcast, but may have access, will have access to post-live podcast on our website, because anybody that wants to can listen to this on our website and repeat the listening. That they understand that they have friends, they have an agency, they have a home by which they can come, and we can help them do whatever needs to be done, as long as it's not criminal, do whatever it needs to be done to help them survive, whether it's as independent, whether it's working with someone. Just come to us. This is your home, this is your parent organization, and we're out there helping the community. Our president, vice president are steady fighting that fight day in and day out, not to mention the rest. Also, I want to highlight cultural competency. That is a necessity, even though we did mention that it is not just Black physicians that take care of Black patients. I got plenty of white friends. I guess I'm sounding a little racist. Plenty of white friends that take very good care of my patients, and I wouldn't hesitate to send them my patients. Because if they were not good, I don't care if they're black, white, blue, green, or yellow, I wouldn't send my patients to them, because it's like sending my parents, and that's pretty much repeated throughout our organization. It'll be like sending our siblings, our parents, to someone that we didn't trust, but we can send the patients. Not good. Okay. And then lastly, I would like to give kudos to Dr. C.B. McIntosh. Dr. McIntosh turned 97 not too long ago within the last this last month.
Wow.
He is a real pioneer when it comes to the different things that he's accomplished, being first here, first there, maybe second somewhere else, as it relates to either the Florida Medical Association, the white folks group, American Medical Association, again, the white folks group, the Duval County Medical Association, white folk group, but then especially when it comes down to the Northeast Florida Medical Society and the NMA. He's been a real pioneer, and I give kudos to him. He's second to none in terms of how well the medical care in the Black community has taken place. With everyone else that was here this evening, I really want to thank you very much. Thanking anyone who's participated in our conversation, whether it's by chat. Not everybody saw it, but quite a few people dipped in on the chat. And if there's anything we can do, we have our website, our information where you can be contacted. We can be contacted. You reach out to us, we'll get back with you.
Thank you all for listening to Pause for the Truth. We really appreciate, again, our guests. Thank you all for coming on tonight. And Dr. Holder, who was navigating the transportation system in New York, felt it important to join us this evening as the president of the Florida State Medical Association. Thank you to our audience. We hope you're inspired to get a good physician. But when you're choosing a good physician, don't forget to also seek a good physician within the Black community. As always, thank you for tuning in to Pause for the Truth. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Good evening.
Welcome to Pause for the Truth. We are grateful that you joined us today and hope you've gained valuable insights on our current topic. We look forward to having you with us next time as we explore trending issues in our community and discover ways to simplify life for you and your loved ones. Our dedicated panelists and staff are committed to sharing knowledge and serving our community. But now, we need your support. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and spread this valuable knowledge to others. Don't forget to invite your family and friends to tune in to our podcast every Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. EST. Visit our website at www.pawsforthetruth.com Pause for the truth. Come and show your support by liking us on Facebook, following us on Twitter, and linking with us on LinkedIn. Feel free to email us with any questions, or concerns, or show topic recommendations at info@pauseforthetruth.com.